Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to our last presentation of the day. I wanted to take a moment to introduce you to Mark Meyers. He has been the executive director of the Peaceful Valley Donkey Rescue for the past 2.5 decades, which he co-founded with his wife Amy in December of 2000. This is going to be a fascinating um, presentation, I'm sure. Mark has done more than I can probably talk about in an introduction. So he's written books, he's done documentaries, but I'm going to let him turn it over to him and let him talk about what he's done and the work he's doing and how we can help. Um, just as a reminder, everyone's video and microphones are off. So if you have any questions, please put them in the chat and we will try to get to them after Mark's presentation. So thank you again, Mark, for being here, and thank you everyone for coming in. And I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for having me. This is kind of like Smokey and the Bandit. We got a long way to go and a short time to get there. So let me share my screen here. Come on. All right. Everybody can see that all right, I hope.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. Let's talk about wild burros or wild donkeys, however you like to say it. They're the exact same thing. The government used the term burro to make them sound like an invasive species, basically, but they're exact same animal. Why is my Why are we not advancing here? There we go. All right, I'm just going to touch on the brief history of donkeys just so we're all on the same page. They were domesticated by the Egyptians and Mesopotamians. The picture that's on this page is of one of the first pharaohs' burial site, and they found donkeys there buried with him. These donkeys were between 4 and 5 years old. Now, we've all seen King Tut's treasures. So these donkeys were actually very important to him, obviously. That's why they were buried with him. So donkeys have had value throughout civilization. So Egypt was obviously a trading hub back in their heyday. And so the donkeys were traded all around the world because everybody saw their value. And they're even found in places like Japan and Indonesia. And I say that because they had to be put on ships to be taken there. So basically every civilization on the planet has a donkey culture. You know, we always think of horses, but donkeys built most civilizations. They came over here, they crossed the Atlantic on Columbus's second voyage, and they were quickly distributed throughout Central and South America by the Spaniards. They crossed the Rio Grande in 1598. Now, that's important because that was 9 years before the establishment of Jamestown, which is arguably the first English colony. Today, they're listed as a feral species, a non-native species, even though they watched the English come ashore. Might be a small fact, but it is indeed a fact that they were here first. Kind of bugs me. But most people don't know that almost every island in the Caribbean has a donkey population. Most of them aren't doing very well. They live in the dumps. I actually just did a film about the donkeys in the Caribbean. You can find it at Caribbean.movie. But on some islands, they're completely exterminated. The governments wanted them shot, which they were. But it's a mess down in the Caribbean. If I was 25 years younger, I'd go down there and solve the problems, but I'm not. So that's how they came over. This is some of their contributions here in this country. It was the Spanish Trail Catholic Missions, the railroads. They were the front runners of all the railroads. A lot of people don't realize that. That's how they got the dynamite and the food to the workers was on the backs of donkeys. We all know about the miners and the gold and all that stuff and the donkey and the prospector. But they had a lot more contributions than just that. And then the sugarcane plantations, especially in Hawaii. We flew 120 donkeys from the Big Island, Hawaii, into Los Angeles because of a severe drought. They were living there for a long time and not bothering anybody until there was no rain and no grass. And so they started eating the golf courses, and that didn't go over very well. So donkeys are a big part of every culture. They're a big part of the history of the United States, big part of the history of the Caribbean, Australia. They built it. It was built on their backs, and they never really got the credit that they deserved. Um, and what happened was when we were done with them, we just let them go. One reason we were done with them was the conclusion of World War II. Military equipment was cheap, so everybody bought a Jeep and let their donkeys go. And donkeys can pretty much survive in any environment. They can fend for themselves. They're hardy as hell, and they can go 5 days without water and then fill right back up once they find a water source. So they're doing okay. This particular picture was taken in Death Valley. Death Valley is perfect donkey habitat, and they thrive there. And this is way, 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 way back country in Death Valley. Most people that visit Death Valley have no idea they have donkeys there. We have a contract to remove them. It breaks my heart because they just thrive. That's donkey habitat. Okay, 1971, Congress passed the Free Roaming Wild Horse and Burro Act. Basically, prior to that, people were harassing the herds. They were shooting them. They were rounding them up. They were doing all sorts of mischief with the donkeys. And a lot of it was ranchers because they felt the horses and donkeys were competing with their cattle. And so Wild Horse Annie, a lot of you have probably heard that name, petitioned Congress to do something, and so they ended up, and it was almost unanimous in Congress. Of course, there was those that couldn't vote for it because of their constituency, but Nixon signed it into law that they're protected. All these horses and burros are protected as part of our Western history, and almost immediately, all these different divisions of the Department of Interior said, "Well, that doesn't apply to us." And one of those was the National Park Service. The department, let's see, U.S. Fish and Wildlife said that. The military, all these different things said, nope, not us. They're not protected here. So now it boils down to they're only protected on Bureau of Land Management and the Forest Service. So, so let's talk about that. They're not protected national parks, military installations, Native American reservations, state lands, and county land. So they have no protection there. So the National Park Service has a zero horse and burro policy. So if you press them as to why, they'll say, well, our mission is to protect the natural habitat within the park, but also whatever structures historically are significant within the park. And the donkeys are non-native. They shouldn't be here. They destroy the natural landscape and they foul the water sources. Okay, that's a direct quote. Now, look at this picture. Does that look like a destroyed natural environment? I'm going to go on the side of no. That's a beautiful desert landscape right there. This is in Butte Valley and Death Valley. Now, every time they say they foul a water source, they use this spring in the picture. This is the geologist cabin. Now, I don't know how the donkeys were able to get that pipe into that spring in order to foul that, but I'm not going with this at all. The donkeys use this spring because it's available, but they're not the ones causing the damage there. But the National Park Service loves to use this as an example. They'll also say that they will take over a spring and not let any other animals use the water, which is also false. We have the research to prove it. I've actually watched coyotes drink from the same water source as Jeanettes in their foals. So none of that's true. And that's my corgi bean sitting there watching that Jack drink out of that pipe. Okay, so we have contracts with the National Park Service, the Army, NASA Goldstone to remove donkeys out of a certain section of California desert. I'll show you a map in a minute. And we don't take any government money. So we do it basically for free to the government. But in order for us to do that, part of the deal was they had to approve our research permits. Now, they don't like approving research permits because it's going to prove them wrong. Everything they based their zero horse and burro policy on was research done in the 1970s. And that guy didn't like donkeys. And if you ever go to the backcountry of Death Valley, you'll see T-posts and ranch fencing in certain areas. And that was how he proved it. He said, okay, I'm going to put this fence up, and inside the donkeys can't go, but outside they can. And look how much nicer that is inside the fence. If you go today, it looks the exact same, but that was the basis of his research. So now I have these research permits, and that's not me stumbling around the desert. These are PhDs that did this research. Uh, Dr. Eric Lundgren is probably the premier source of donkey information in the world. If you're involved in this at all, you probably heard that name or read one of his papers. But they're a benefit. They're a huge benefit to the deserts. So they can dig a well over 4 feet deep. They can smell water that deep and dig a hole to get to it. Now, that's not just donkey water. That's coyote water, mountain lion water, bird water, rabbit water. Anybody can use that water because that's now a source. There's a lot of natural springs in Death Valley. And if you've never been there, you probably have this idea that it's just parched. It's not. There's a lot of natural springs, but they get so overgrown that you can't get to the water. Donkeys can. They will tunnel into that to get to the water. And guess what? That's another source for all the other animals in the desert to get to that water. Now, donkeys by nature don't hang around anywhere. They travel from water source to water source to water source. So, um, by doing that, they're trimming their own hooves. The donkey in this picture was an oatman, but if you look, their hooves are just perfect. Donkey hooves are perfect because they're always on the move, but it's from water source to water source. They spread seeds as they move around, so they'll eat something over here, they'll move, they'll drop their manure. So they're fertilizing, but they're also moving vegetation around the area. And then lastly, and Eric Lindgren um, has the photographic evidence of them taking out the mountain lions taking out donkeys when there's bighorn sheep in the area because they're easier to take out. So if we were to remove 100% of the donkeys out of, say, Death Valley, what are the mountain lions going to eat? They're going to start decimating the bighorn sheep populations. So these are all benefits of keeping donkeys in those areas. Now they have to be managed. I'm not one that says, oh, hands off, just let them go crazy because a herd of donkeys will double in size every 4 years. So it can easily get out of control. So they have to be managed. But do they have to be eradicated is the question. When they provide so much benefit to the desert, do they have to be eradicated or can they simply be managed? So, okay, I'm going to pick on Arizona BLM a little bit simply because I work with them a lot. We just bought a new property that's down the street from their Florence, Arizona facility, and we actually just took 130 from them last month, I believe. But the black areas are their herd management areas, HMAs, they're called. And then the red is their Florence, Arizona holding facility, and we're down by Tucson. So this is my beef. I've been doing this for 25 years. And if you look at Arizona, and this is March 1st, 2025. They obviously haven't done the 26 yet. But for as long as I've been in this business, they say there's around 250 horses, about 10,000 burros, and y'all are blocking my. But I think the appropriate management level is, what does it say there? 1,600 maybe. So they've been saying that for 25 years. So only one of two things can be true. Either this 10,000 animals has eaten Arizona completely down to the nubs and they've all fallen over dead from starvation, or that appropriate management level is not correct. It can't go both ways. So maybe, and this is just maybe, we need to readdress who is coming up with these appropriate management levels. They've been doing it since 1971 when I was 7 years old. I'm not 7 years old anymore, but they rely on me as the pressure valve. Oh, we need to move 250 donkeys. Hey, Mark, can you take 250 donkeys? Yes. Okay, we'll have them. They'll be ready next week. So that allows them to take as many donkeys out of the desert as they want to because they know I'm there. I think we need to take another look at this and see who all is sitting down making these appropriate management level decisions. Because there's a lot of people that are way smarter than me that should have a voice in how we're doing these adjustments to see how many uh, animals it can support. Now, you have to understand, I'm not a horse guy. There's other people that are horse guys. I'm a donkey guy. But I know for a fact that the donkeys can do much better, especially in these desert terrains, than horses. They can go much longer without water. So I think we need to look at, let's not lump horses and donkeys together into the same formula because the donkeys can live on less vegetation and they can live on less water. So we need to separate out how we're doing those calculations. All right, so here's the problem. I said I'm not the horse guy. I'm not into solving this problem. But the BLM, this is the latest number I could find. They have 64,000 horses in storage. These are horses that are standing around in corrals being hand fed, and it's eating 50% of the BLM's budget. Nobody wants a horse they can't ride, and that's just the way of it. Now, the BLM is pretty successful in adopting out Jeanettes and foals because they're easier to manage and they're pets. You can pet them on the head, you can give them a carrot, but nobody wants to get on the back of a wild Mustang. That takes training, that takes a lot of time. So they have all these horses standing around and it's killing their budget. So, in order to counter that, in 2004, I think he was a senator from Wyoming, stuck into a spending bill this Burns Amendment, where he said, hey, let's do this. Any horse or donkey over 10 years old or has been offered for adoption 3 times unsuccessfully can be sold. Well, right out of the gate, some cowboy bought 2 semi trucks worth and shipped them down to Mexico and sold them for slaughter. And that kind of screwed the whole system up. So now there's more checks and balances in place, I'm told. But Peaceful Valley Donkey Rescue has bought over 3,000 of these cell burrows. And I have to sign all these contracts that I won't sell them to slaughter or whatever. But we have to pay $25 a piece for them because the law says they must be sold. So we have to meet the letter of the law. This pictures of a couple of the old boys. These are old jacks that have spent their whole life fighting during mating season. They're my favorite. The old jacks are my favorite. But now that with our new facility, typically we take all the jacks that the BLM catches, and they used to have to get shipped from Arizona all the way to Texas. Now they get shipped 40 miles down the road to our new facility. We just castrated, I think, 50 down there. We kind of designed that new facility for castrations, and it's wonderful. The BLM came and inspected it, and they were like blown away by the detail we put into it and the care that we can provide the castrated jacks in that facility. So it's a pretty good deal. Well, let's go to the next one. U.S. Forestry has a much smaller footprint when it comes to the donkeys, but they have budget cuts. I had a meeting with them a few months ago and they're mulling the decision to hand their entire borough program over to us. And I haven't heard back. I don't know what we're doing yet, but with all the budget cuts and all the Doge and all that kind of stuff, we don't know what's going to happen. Yeah, it wouldn't be a big deal for us. We have 4,000 donkeys in our system right now, and that constantly turns over because of our adoption program and different things. But their donkeys wouldn't be a big deal if we added them to ours. Okay, this is from Project 2025, which was a big deal during the last election. And the reason I took this and I didn't get it from another source is because they bring in the BLM's Wild Horse and Burro Advisory Board. They bring in Humane Society, ASPCA, all these different, they kind of quote all these different things that are all saying the same thing. And that is you need to dispose of the 60,000 horses. You got to kill them, got to get rid of them humanely. Now, I don't know what that means. Does that mean you go out into these feedlots and shoot them all in the head? I don't know. It doesn't say. Does that mean you sell them all to slaughter in Mexico? Because that damn sure is not humane. Does that mean that we reopen the slaughterhouses, the equine slaughterhouses here in the United States? Because they didn't make it illegal to slaughter horses and donkeys here in the United States. They just removed the inspectors so you couldn't sell the meat if you were to do it. So I don't know what this means. Congress must enact laws permitting the BLM to dispose humanely of these animals. So that's pretty vague. But, and again, I'm not the horse guy, but they do usually have around 1,800 burros in their holding facilities. And if they, whatever they do to the horses, they're going to want to do to the donkeys. And I want to be in a position that I can just step up and say, look, I'll take all the donkeys. And yes, we would take 1,800 donkeys if that was the case. Okay, so this is an export report from the USDA across the Mexican border, dated December 31st, 2025. I know it's small, but uh, if you look at the New Mexico numbers crossing the border, it was, and I'll just skip to the year to date, 4,000 crossed the border in 2025. And they mix horses and donkeys together. So there's no telling what the ratio of horses and donkeys are. They could all be donkeys, they could all be horses, could be half and half. They don't care, they don't count. I've talked to the USDA people, I've worked with the USDA people. They simply don't care. That's why they don't separate them out. Texas, the numbers were much higher, 17,000 in 2025 compared to 13,000 in 2024. Actually, I blew it up so you can see what the numbers were. That's a lot of animals crossing for the purpose of slaughter. Okay, so where do these donkeys come from? I can tell you without a doubt that they're not coming from fake Facebook kill pins. Without a doubt. These people are shysters. They're just bad people. This is Eloy, which is very near my house or my new facility out there. When anybody that uses the term bail is a crook. They're playing on people's emotions. And $375 each is ridiculous because this is a business. These people are selling donkeys for their hides and some for the meat. Although Mexico, I couldn't find anywhere where Mexico exports meat, only hides. But if you're starting out at 375 to secure to get a live donkey, that's pretty high. Now you have to make that back plus. Okay, I've been in business my entire life. If you're in it for the money, so okay, I'm going to buy these donkeys for almost $400. I got to transport them down to the border. That you're starting out in the wrong direction. Okay, so where are the donkeys coming from? The Navajo Nation has thousands, if not tens of thousands, of donkeys that are uncounted. Nobody cares. I know this because we transport through there all the time with donkeys, and they'll come up and say, "You want donkeys? Go over that hill right there. There's probably 5,000 donkeys on the other side of that hill." So if I was in the business of selling donkey hides, I would go there where I could take as many as I wanted because they're free. And free is better than $375 a piece. So that's where I would go. Or I'd go to West Texas where there used to be herds of hundreds, if not thousands, and this was fairly recently, But because there's no real federal land in Texas, they're up for grabs. They're running around oil fields being a nuisance, and everybody in West Texas is a cowboy. So I would gather those, and they're pretty easy to gather, and they're right near Presidio, which is the border crossing into Mexico. So it's better to start out at free than to give these shysters $375 a piece. Okay, so let's look at this is from the Donkey Sanctuary UK, or actually, no, this is from Karoo Donkey Sanctuary down in South Africa, who was instrumental in getting the African nation to ban donkey export. That happened in 2024. Certain African countries would ban donkey export, but people from the neighboring countries would just sneak in and steal people's donkeys and sell them to the slaughterhouses. So that wasn't working. So the African nation actually banned all donkey exports. In Ethiopia, they have a saying, a woman without a donkey becomes a donkey. Donkeys are crucial in impoverished nations for women and children because without that donkey, the kids ain't going to school. They're working in the fields. So they're crucial. So United States is lit up in that, I don't know, mauve color because yes, we feed donkeys into the slaughter pipeline. Mexico has slaughterhouses. A lot of donkeys come out of South America. China is the number one consumer of donkey hides. That is what donkey hides look like once they're processed. China is consuming 4 million to 6 million donkeys a year, which is completely unsustainable. Donkeys only throw one foal a year. They're not easy to manage as livestock. It just doesn't work as well as, say, cattle does. And so they're not going to be able to produce this many donkeys worldwide for very long. Uh, so this is what the hides typically sell for, 25 to $55, depending on how they want to buy them, whether they're dried, whether they're wet, salted, whatever. That's the price range. 1,500 pieces minimum. That's how many fit in a storage container to ship them overseas. So again, if I'm starting out at 375 buying a donkey and they're only worth 25 to 55. Now that doesn't count the meat, but only certain abattoirs or abattoirs are qualified to sell donkey meat. So Mexico, I couldn't find exports donkey meat, only the hides. So you're not making any money. You're upside down if you're buying them for 375 and those hides are only worth 25 to 55. And this is what the hides look like once they've been taken to China and boiled down. Isn't that delicious? Uh, how you say it? Yeho, something like that. Yijiao, that's it, Yijiao. And it's traditional Chinese medicine. I don't know. I wouldn't put it in my mouth, but this is from Amazon. Amazon proudly sells it, and I guess it'll cure what ails you. But this is worth 4 million to 6 million donkeys a year. Is this crap? I don't know. Now let's talk about Australia. They killed 3 million donkeys in Western Australia alone. And the reason they killed them is because they couldn't find a way to gather them and harvest them for Chinese hides. They thought of everything they could and they just couldn't figure it out. So they got in helicopters and they killed 3 million just in Western Australia. They also killed horses, water buffalo, camels, all sorts of anything that was a herbivore that wasn't a cow, they shot. And if you remember before the pandemic, what was the big news? Australia was on fire. Put the koala bear on the endangered list, but it was on fire. Why was it on fire? Because if you kill everything that eats grass, what's going to happen to the grass? It's going to keep growing. And it caught on fire. They didn't give it much forethought. So we did a film down there on a cattle station because this family has 150 donkeys that the government is doing everything they can to kill that last 150 donkeys. But when this family bought that cattle station, it was in ruin. There, no grazing, there was no nothing. So what they're doing is they're using the cattle and the donkeys to restore the land. But the government doesn't buy it. They want those donkeys gone. And it's really a mess down there. But if they could have found a way to gather those 3 million donkeys, they would have sold them into slaughter. Okay, so who are we? What gives me the right to talk about all this stuff? Peaceful Valley Donkey Rescue is 25 years old. We started out in Southern California as a backyard hobby. Our sons were kindergarten and first grade at the time. And it's exploded over the years. We're now nationwide. We have 50 employees. We have thousands of volunteers. We have around 4,000 donkeys at any given moment. Um, we're very well funded, but we don't take any government money whatsoever. And people say, well, why not? Because I won't give them a seat at my table. They've screwed their program up. Why would I want them to screw my program up? These are some of the Wild Bro projects that we're doing and have done. We can put up some pretty big numbers. We just brought in, I think, 30 from Fort Irwin the other day. Okay, so these are some of the areas we manage in California. Those orange areas represent 5.5 million acres. And the whitish areas around them, most of that is managed by the Bureau of Land Management. To kind of give you an idea of this protected, not protected. So if you see China Lake and then you look up and you see Death Valley, that area between there is Panamint Valley. Panamint Valley is managed by the Bureau of Land Management. So if I'm a donkey in Panamint Valley, I'm federally protected. But if I move east, if I start wandering east and I cross that orange line, I lose my federal protection. And now Mark has a contract that he's got to catch me. And that's just how it works. I go from being federally protected to not protected at all. On a side note, right around, well, that lake looking thing on the right hand side of Panamint Valley, someone killed 7 donkeys, shot them dead. And I don't see the sport in it because donkeys will just stand there and look at you. But yeah, somebody shot 7 donkeys there either last year or year before that. But these are some of the areas that we manage, and it's vast. I mean, these are vast areas. The donkeys aren't hurting anybody. They're not getting out on the roads and getting hit like they were in San Bernardino. But government doesn't want them. Now, Fort Irwin, I understand. They use the tank targets as shade and they get blown up. And you got an 18-year-old kid on the trigger and he blows up a donkey, he might not pull the trigger again. So they want the donkeys out of there. NASA Goldstone are these giant satellite dishes where they talk to the Mars rover and the donkeys were eating the cable underneath them. Not a good thing. So yeah, they got to go. The strip of land between Fort Irwin and Death Valley is called the bowling alley. That is now actually part of Death Valley. But we have water traps there to draw the donkeys out of China Lake because we can never get into China Lake because every time there's a break in the bombings and things that they do, uh, um, they have some top secret thing that they schedule and we can't go. So, but we do draw the donkeys out of there. Okay, here's some donkey facts. Um, the top picture is a safety circle. When they get startled and they don't know who they're dealing with, they circle up. I don't see any foals in that particular picture, but if there were, they'd be in the middle and they look every which way to make sure nothing's going to sneak up on them. So when I started going out to Death Valley to count numbers and see where the herds were moving around, that's what they did to me. They circled up. I didn't move, so one of the more aggressive Jennies charged me. By my third visit, the bottom picture, they didn't care. I never hurt them. I never got too close. So by the third visit, you can see those Jennies have turned their back on it. They don't care. It's just that big guy with a camera. That's how smart these animals are. If they don't feel threatened, they're like, yeah, whatever. But if they feel threatened, they will not hesitate to hurt you. Different animal than horses. We went to what's called the Nevada Triangle, which is a fenced area, the only part of Death Valley in Nevada, and it has horses. By the time we stopped and get out of our vehicles to take pictures, those horses had already started running. We never got decent pictures of them. They have a flight reaction. Donkeys have a fight reaction. They will fight to protect their babies. Um, we do a lot of behavior modification with wild donkeys. It's really not that difficult. If we're going to start a new project, say like in San Bernardino, we picked out our areas, we threw out alfalfa, we honked the horn, and we left. We did that for a few days. We started setting up the traps to get them used to it. So when we're ready to catch them, close the gate. There you go. Um, we do not use helicopters and cowboys like the government. It's counterproductive to what we're trying to do, which is to adopt these animals into homes. So we use what's called a finger trap. I'm going to play this real quick so you get an idea of how Peaceful Valley operates. All right, so the donkeys see the food inside. This is our trap at Warm Springs Canyon. This is in Death Valley. We're not currently using this one, but they would see the food and smell the food inside. They see that gap so they can walk in. We condition them to get used to these bars. They bump the bars open. They start eating, and then they turn around. And they see the bars, they see the bars, and they see the bars. They don't see any way out. And it works every time. We've only had one at Fort Irwin, an older, really smart Jenny, who knows how to stick her nose under there and work it up and out. And she gets out every time. So we're devising another means to catch that one. But this is very effective, especially on the wild ones. So that's a finger trap. Okay, so this is the Peaceful Valley layout. We have area just outside of Tucson. San Angelo, Texas is the headquarters, and we're out in Asheville, North Carolina. This helps us be a national rescue where we can literally adopt donkeys and rescue donkeys all across the country. Without adoption, we become hoarders really quick. We bring in about 1,000 donkeys every year, which means we have to try to adopt out at least 1,000 to keep our heads above water. Our donkeys, they got to be friendly. They got to be pets. They have to walk on a lead, pick up their hooves for trimming. But we have what's called a reverter clause. And that means if the adopters can no longer care for the donkeys for whatever reason, they have to move, they have to take care of their parents, whatever. They just call us. We bring the donkeys back in, no big deal. We find them a new home. Donkeyadoption.org is the website you can go to if you're interested in adopting or learning more, or if you want to become a satellite adoption center for us. But the adoption program is the most important program that we have because we have to move the donkeys into good homes or the whole system collapses. These are some of our satellite adoption centers all across the country, and it's a great program. These are volunteers. They take between 10 to 20 donkeys at a time, find them homes locally, and it's awesome. Awesome. Really awesome. So not all the donkeys that come in are ready to be adopted, especially the ones we get from the Bureau of Land Management. Those donkeys have been chased with helicopters. They've been roped. They've been cattle prodded. The ones we just got from Arizona BLM, the term we use is rank because they are trying to hurt you. We just had to run them through to do their hooves, and I mean, they are vicious. But why not? The only way they've been treated is viciously from humans. They don't know who we are. So it's going to take a couple of years probably before they realize, hey, these people aren't so bad. So the best thing for them is we put them out on the sanctuary. Uh, Lots of acreage. They think they're free again. They still get the same medical, dental, health care as everybody else, but they have a sense of freedom, which is important. You can learn more about it at donkeysanctuaryus.org. Right now, I think we have about 2,700 donkeys out on sanctuary. We have a team that does nothing but look after these donkeys. They get their hooves done at different frequencies because some of it is soft soil, some of it's a little more rocky. And so the soft soil guys are on a shorter interval than the rocky guys. We make sure they're all accounted for. So we go out every month and we kind of do the horn and alfalfa trick. They honk the horn, all the donkeys come in. They do a head count. If anybody's missing, they'll call me and we go out there at night and we do a thermal drone and we count them at night. And if anybody's missing, then we'll go out in like a John Deere Gator and look to see what's going on. But all of them have to be accounted for. These are our responsibility. We don't want to lose them. If something happened to one of them, we want to know about it. These are not donkeys that are forgotten. All these donkeys are important to us. They're important to our mission. They're important to us. Um, well, they're ours. They're our donkeys, and we want to make sure everybody's safe. And so we account for them every month, every single month. And those are our sanctuary locations. Some of those locations have two or three sanctuaries at them. I was told recently that we are going into Louisiana. I'm not sure when that's going to happen. All right, so we have 4,000 donkeys. How on earth do we keep track of them? Every donkey has what's called a donkey 360. This is all the information that pertains to that particular donkey. Its name, which is pretty much irrelevant when you have 4,000 donkeys, but its microchip number, its location, its color, its designation. Is it a domestic? Is it a wild burro? Its sex, its rescue case ID, which is very important because that tells us where it came from. Was it from Death Valley? Was it from San Bernardino? Whatever. That rescue case number stays with it. So we always know where it came from. We always know where it is. And if you look at the tabs at the bottom, we have training tabs. They're graded A through F on everything friendly, stands tied, front hose, back hose, everything. Care records, that means where they are in the system. Are they in Texas? Are they in Arizona? Are they adopted? Any other notes, and then any medical information that happens to them. So that's everyone. Uh-oh. Not sure why I had blinking there. Okay, people will always say, "Well, Mark, what is your capacity? What's your limit?" And that's the wrong question. That's the wrong question to any rescue. What's your financial capacity is the question. It's not a space issue because we have a long list of ranchers that want us to put donkeys on their place. The question is, can we afford to do these rescues? Peaceful Valley will not take a donkey in that we cannot care for life. And so when we make these commitments, like taking 1,800 donkeys from the Bureau of Land Management, yes, we financially can afford to take care of those 1,800 donkeys for life. So that's the question that people should ask. Um, we have properties that we own that we haven't developed yet. But the idea is we don't want to storage all these donkeys and fall into the trap of the Bureau of Land Management. We want to adopt these donkeys into good quality homes. And the key to that success is the way we catch. Most of the donkeys that come in here are wild. Um, Probably half and half between what we get from the BLM and what we catch ourselves, and we want them to go to good homes. So adoption is critical to that. Um, but the BLM ones, they're the wild cards. The trainers go out on the sanctuaries on a regular basis to see who comes up and who's friendly, and those donkeys get picked to go into the training system. Peaceful Valley, we are accredited by the Global Federation of Animal Sanctuaries. which was not easy to do because we got accredited when we had the three facilities and we had about 3,000 donkeys at the time. It would have been easier to do when we had 250 donkeys, but yet we got accredited because we do everything right. We work with a lot of the major veterinary schools across the country. Uh, we do everything right because we're so big, people are gunning for us. They're trying to prove that we're not what we say we are, so we have to do everything right. We're also four-star rated in Charity Navigator. And that's what I have. Um, I have no idea what time it is. Oh, pretty good.
That was amazing. Thank you. And thank you for all the work that you guys do. That was really incredible, very informative. There's a couple questions in the chat, so let's see. Isabella said it sounds like donkeys are similar to beavers and how they benefit water in the land. I don't know if you have any comments on that.
Yes, they're very similar to that, but there's a definite benefit to having them in these landscapes, and the government doesn't want to recognize that. Again, I go back to the fact that they predate the English, and it was the same in Australia. They Captain Cook is their Christopher Columbus. And so if you want to be considered native, you had to get there before Captain Cook. Here, if you want to be considered native, you had to get there before Columbus. But that's silly because nothing is truly native to North America. It all came across the Aleutian Straits. So why do we have to make this distinction? And why do we have to make a donkey such a negative thing? And well, I can tell you why, because they're a competition to the rancher's cattle. And that's the bottom line. The ranchers are a very, very powerful lobby, and the donkeys have no real lobby. I don't like politics. I don't like getting involved in politics, but I think it's inevitable that I'm going to have to start working towards changing the Wild Horse and Burro Act so that more people have input into how these appropriate management levels are handled, how the zero horse and burro policy is implemented. Uh, I just think it's important that we change these things that we've clung to for so many years that are wrong. It's bad science they're based on, and we need to look at things in a new light for these animals. And again, I'm not the horse guy. There was a terrible drought in Nevada. Lake Mead, you could almost walk across it, it was so low. But that's much harder on the horses than it is on the donkeys. The donkeys can thrive in that. So again, I can't speak to the horse side of it, but I damn sure can speak to the donkey side of it, and they thrive. I'm out there in my Jeep all the time, and the donkeys didn't hurt them at all. So we need to look at these things through one set of lenses for the horses, another set of lenses for the donkeys, and we need to get smarter people involved and not just say, oh, well, we're the government, we're going to make these decisions, and y'all got to live with it.
Angela wants to know, are the donkeys from Death Valley actively being captured?
Not right now. California's been having these things they call atmospheric rivers. And I don't understand what that means, but what it does is it dumps amazing amounts of water. And so Death Valley has a lake right now, and there's so much water and so much green that it's pointless to try to trap them because they literally, if you've never heard a donkey laugh, go out and try to catch one when there's green things to eat and water all over the place. It's impossible, really, to trap in those kind of conditions. Typically, when we trap, it's all dry, it's all brown, and so when they see that green alfalfa and water, they're like, "Hell yeah, let's go in that trap and get some of that." And on that note, we did a collar study, and the donkeys that were collared would go into the trap every single day to eat their breakfast, get a drink of water, and stand there and wait to be released because they knew somebody would be coming by and open the trap and letting them back out. That's how gentle the whole process was, which defeated the purpose of the study because we wanted to track them moving around, but they didn't. They just knew there was free food and water right there at that trap and they weren't going to get hurt in any way.
Just curious, what happens to a donkey who isn't friendly, thusly not adaptable at PVDR? I'm guessing that they're the ones that end up in the sanctuaries that you talked
Exactly.
about.
I caught a Jenny in on the Sheldon Wildlife Refuge in northern Arizona, and she tried to kill me. And I'm not kidding. She literally tried to kill me. So I let her go. And I caught her every time I was up there, I caught her. And every time she tried to kill me. And the last catch, the superintendent told me, he's like, look, you didn't hear this from me, but I'm under orders that any remaining donkeys are going to be shot. And so I took her. And she's still just as dangerous. So we have it marked on which sanctuary she is, and only certain people go to that sanctuary because she will try to eat you. But yeah, they go out. We have the equipment. We have wild mules that are full-size, horse-sized mules that are wild. They're nuts, but we have the equipment to be able to worm them, trim them, do everything that they need so that they can have a nice life without hurting people. But yeah, we don't euthanize for that. All these animals are met at whatever they need. We give them that, and they just live out their lives as a donkey or as a mule, whatever they need, they get. And the people are safe, and only certain people are allowed to get around them because they know the dangers.
Angela wants to know if there are any current updates on the donkeys of, is it Riche Canyon in California? She's,
Ricci,
yeah,
I know I haven't been following along with that. We had a contract with San Bernardino County to remove the donkeys. We did 256, but there was a Facebook group that tried everything to make us look bad. They even doxed us, our trustees, our executive officers, meaning they put out our home addresses and our phone numbers and our personal emails and all this stuff. And the county decided to end the contract because of them. Most of the projects we do, we get negative. Oh, leave the Death Valley donkeys alone. Leave these donkeys alone. Look, I'm earning a seat at the table, so I have a bigger say in the policies that govern them. I don't want to see them all gone. I just want to be in a position to manage them. But I can tell you this, in all my years in contracting in Los Angeles, I never once received a death threat. In my 25 years of rescuing donkeys, I've received more than I can count. My wife and I both. And it's ridiculous.
it is. It really is.
So no, there's no updates. We took 256 donkeys out of that area. There's probably 1,000 more. The county gave this little rescue some money to castrate 100 males, but it's illogical because let's say you have 1,000 donkeys, 500 of them are males. You castrate 100 of those. That still leaves 400 males to breed the 500 females. So it's not scientific. It's nonsensical.
Yeah.
The geldings are more likely to end up along the roads to get hit because they're not high strung like a jack. It's stupid. It's poor management. It's just poor management. You got to get the numbers down. Like I say, let's say there's 1,000 left. In 4 years, there's going to be 2,000.
What's the typical lifespan?
It depends on the region. The oldest one I know about personally was 52 when he's put down, and the lady owned him all 52 years. I just lost my buddy Job, who was 44, but that's with good care in a domestic setting. In the wild, we they might get up into their early 20s, but that would be about it. They slow down. The herds in the wild are matriarchal, so you'll see an older Jenny with her daughters and their daughters and their daughters. The males, when they're born, are kicked out around 6 months to prevent inbreeding, and they form bachelor groups that'll pretty much stay together for life. And when it comes to the breeding season, they'll fight like hell with each other. They'll do their breeding, and then they go back to hanging out with each other. Uh, but old males, old jacks that are no longer messing around with the jennies, that some jenny herds will let them in for protection. We see that quite often.
Fascinating. What is the condition of burros coming off the range?
Um, I haven't seen any poor donkeys coming off anywhere. The Death Valley ones are beautiful. The Mojave National Preserve ones were in pretty rough shape. I don't know why. I don't know if that was the condition. We didn't catch them. They were caught by either contractors or ranchers. I don't know, but by the time we got our hands on them, they were skinny and in really poor condition. But the Death Valley ones, the Fort Irwin ones that Rebecca, our Waldboro manager out there, caught were beautiful in great condition. So typically, they're thriving out there.
Um, Krista says so interesting, and a bunch of people have said thank you for the work you do and for the presentation. They really enjoyed it. How do we watch the movies you made for the Caribbean and in Australia?
They can find them on the website. I believe that they're both under the projects tab. They can also go to burrowmanproductions.com, but everything's under donkeyrescue.org. That's the easiest place to find everything, including the donations tab, which is the most important part of the website. Because this
Uh,
ain't cheap. Trust me, this ain't cheap.
Greg wants to know, don't you recognize that the ass branch of the horse family evolved in North America? He said it's well proven in paleontology.
There was an equine that developed in North America. That is true. But I don't make that argument. I make the argument that the common known donkey of today crossed in 1598. And those are the ones I deal with. I'm not a paleontologist, none of that. I'm the donkey guy. And the donkey, as we know it, came in 1598.
How do donkeys attack when they're confronted and scared? What is they're just asking in general, like curiously, what do they do?
Um, they attack typically with their front hooves and teeth. I know that's how they've always come at me when the very first slide showed a donkey with his mouth open, brain. And that's because he didn't see me coming, and I knelt down and took his picture, and I startled him, so he charged me. But that's the same picture that was in my bio when I got the orange beanie on, because once he realized I wasn't a danger, he and I made friends pretty quickly. But yeah, they're not scared. They just decide whether or not they have to remove you as a threat. And so typically somebody my size, they won't attack because I'm taller than they are. But dogs, coyotes, things like that, yeah, they'll just trounce them to death. They have no fear. I had a donkey years ago that killed two dogs that attacked us, and just without hesitation, teeth and front hooves. And that's typically how jacks will react even when in captivity, whereas Jeanettes are more likely to kick you with their rear hooves.
What are your thoughts about PCP as a management tool?
On the islands, it's realistic because they're in a small area where you can actually keep track of them. But in an area like Death Valley, it's not feasible. There's too many of them. They have too great a range. They could go over the mountain into Panamint Valley. They could go over the other side into Beatty. There's just no way because it only lasts for a couple of years and you have to redose them. So you've kind of wasted your time if you don't get that Jenny again. So there needs to
Um,
be more research on better birth control.
I know you talked about Death Valley again. Are there any captures being planned for Death Valley
Not
that
at the
you're aware
moment,
of?
no.
Okay. Because someone's asking, there's no ranching land in Death Valley, so what would be the reason for having to get rid of the burros then? Like,
That
what's
that
the
just goes back to the National Park Service policy of zero horses and burros. That's it. It's park land. They went zero. They went all gone. The same with the Mojave National Preserve, which is managed by the Park Service, even though Senator Feinstein wanted that to be preserved in the state she founded, which was cattle ranches, cowboys, donkeys, everything that was there was meant to be preserved. But when they handed control over the Park Service says, well, we have a zero horse and burro policy. Get all the donkeys gone. So that's, to me, that's not preserving anything. But yeah, they have a zero horse and burro policy throughout all the national parks.
I think that you talked about this a little bit. Do donkeys suffer severe emotional distress when captured, like, dismantled bonds like the wild horses do? I think you talked about that a little bit, but if you want to repeat it.
Um, Excuse my language, but they get pissed when they're hurt and they lash out. And that's the way the government catches them with helicopters and all that. As far as emotional distress, I wouldn't call it that. I would call it anger because they try to get even. My people know this, and so they're very careful around the wild ones, especially when they first come in. That 100 jennies and foals, those donkeys are lashing out because that's the way they were treated. Our donkeys that come off our traps, and you have to understand, they catch themselves. We back a trailer up that has no roof on it. And the way we open the panels, back the trailer up, our people just walk around the other side of the trap and they slowly enter the trap. And the donkeys, to avoid them, will just walk into the trailer. That's as common. They're never hit with anything, they're never yelled at. They just simply walk into the trailer. In Death Valley, for instance, they go to Furnace Creek where the visitor center is, and we keep an employee there to feed them and clean up after them. Well, that employee gets bored, and so he will actually go into the pens, or she, and just sit with them. And so by the time those donkeys are ready to go to the next stop, they're already friendly because they have never had any harsh treatment from any human being. So they're friendly, unlike the ones that have been treated roughly.
So how can we help you, or how can we help burros? What can we do as advocates?
Well, that SAFE Act, I haven't followed that for a while. We got to stop them from crossing the border to go to slaughter. That's important. We've got to, and I don't know how we're going to do it, but we have to get the 1971 Free Roaming Wild Horse and Burro Act changed. We have to get more people involved in that than just the Bureau of Land Management making these decisions. But also the policy, the National Park Service policy of zero horses and burros, when we know for a fact that the donkeys are a benefit being there. So there's so many angles, and the government is so entrenched that I don't know how we're going to make these changes because I'm the donkey guy. I'm not the political guy. So I don't know. You have the Native American reservations that they do their own thing, that nobody's really can hold them accountable to anything. And then you have all these agencies within the Department of Interior that have donkeys. Then you have um, county lands. I think it was 2024, California passed a law where counties can work with qualified nonprofits to remove the donkeys, which is where San Bernardino came in. We're one of the few nonprofits that can catch donkeys and have the means. So there's so much on the table, and we're so busy doing the work that we don't have time to stop and think, okay, how do we get ahead of this? Because it seems like we're always behind the eight ball trying to keep up with the work that's allocated to us. The San Bernardino thing is out of control. They get hit on the roads. A woman was killed when she hit one. They get hit on the railroad tracks. That's a runaway train, in my opinion. Um, they're they're crapping on cemeteries, which I find terribly offensive. I have a daughter that's buried in Palm Springs. If donkeys were crapping on her grave, I would flip out. And I love donkeys, don't get me wrong, but that's offensive. They got to be controlled, they got to be managed, but that doesn't mean they have to be eradicated. So I don't know what the overall solution is, mainly because I don't have time to look at the overall solution when we're out here battling all these different populations of donkeys that need our help. And they need our help. Like I said, we bring in about 1,000 every single year. And that's a lot to contend with when we're trying to push them out um, through adoption.
Krista wants to know, what do you think about the burros in Oatman? Do you think the tourists help get the donkey message out or not?
Uh, that's a tough one. It's a tough. Those are for one thing. Those are BLM managed boroughs. Uh, yeah, I think it does help in a way because they are friendly and tourists can get up close to them. It's the same on some of the islands where they're part of tourism and people do enjoy them. So yeah, I think it pushes a positive message out there. So yeah, I think Oatman overall is a good thing. We considered putting our museum there because, yeah, the donkey tie-in, but it just ended up not being a great fit for us. So we put our museum in Mesquite, Nevada, north of Las Vegas. But no, I think overall, Oatman is a good positive message for the donkeys.
So you work with the Bureau of Land Management and the Forest Service. Like, do you have relationships with local offices?
Yes,
Is that something that you would recommend advocates to try as maybe a different path? I mean, I think maybe instead of having like the us versus them mentality, is there a way for advocates to work with BLM Forest Service offices,
I would
establish
rec
relationships?
I would recommend reaching out to. So I work with uh, the head of the Arizona. He's the boots on the ground guy in Florence, and it's at the Florence uh, State Prison is where they have their holding pens, and he's the one I work with extensively because they get a lot of donkeys. He's the one who sets up the captures, brings in a lot of donkeys. Recently, there's a Indian reservation right across the state line from Havasu, Lake Havasu, and they were having issues with all the donkeys on the reservation getting hit by cars. He didn't have the room to go catch those donkeys and bring them into Florence. And so he called us and said, "Hey, can you take in 100, 150?" And we said, "Sure." So we are that relief valve that they can bring those donkeys to us. I think they brought them, or maybe we got them. I don't know. And then that allows him to go and reduce populations where they are overfilling, like on that reservation, where they're getting out on the roads and getting hit. Because again, don't want to eradicate them, but we have to control the numbers so they're not getting hit, they're not getting killed, and they're not injuring people on the roads. But I've had that relationship with John, geez, 10, 15 years because I don't bash the Bureau of Land Management. I might not agree with them, but I don't work with the people that set policy. I work with people that are on the ground, boots on the ground.
How much influence do you think that local offices have, like when orders are coming from higher up? Do you think that once the orders are coming down, that's it? Or do you think that, like if they were hearing from us as advocates, um, pleading our cases, do you think that that helps? Um, does it make a difference, I guess, when the orders are coming from higher up?
No, I don't think it makes any difference whatsoever. Because one thing, the head of the Department of Interior is a secretary that's appointed by the president. So that changes every 4 to 8 years. And it's going to be whatever that fella's or lady's agenda is. And so I put up the Project 2025, which they claim they're not going by, but those orders are going to come down according to whatever agenda that administration wants to see. And so when that trickles down, those people, they don't have a say in it. That if McDonald's changes the way they want their French fries cooked, the guy that's cooking the French fries, he doesn't have a say in it. And that's kind of how this works. These are employees that follow orders. So no, I don't think it makes a damn bit of difference. They're
So the
going to
real
do what they're
change just
told.
has to go through Washington, D.C.
It has to go through Congress because it literally will take an act of Congress to change anything with the Bureau of Land Management, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, any of the divisions therein, forestry, any of them. It's going to take an act of Congress.
And just so everybody knows, the presentation we had before you today was Ashley Avis from the Wild Beauty Foundation, and I'll have that on our YouTube channel hopefully later on tonight. And her whole presentation was about the SAFE Act, and we talked about that quite a bit. So there are things that people can do to try to help that. So um,
If we
Andrew,
could stop, if we can stop horses and burros from crossing the border for the purpose of slaughter, which the SAFE Act is about, if I'm not mistaken,
right?
that's going to have to change a lot of other things because right now that's a relief valve. The numbers we were looking at was like 17,000 slaughter-bound animals crossing the border year to date. So that's a relief valve. So now we have 17,000 horses and donkeys that aren't leaving the country. Now what do we do with them? Now we're going to have to sit down, all of us, all the horse rescues, the donkey rescues, the federal government, we're all have to sit down and say, okay, what are we going to do with these animals now? We have to change our thinking. We're going to have to change the way we do things. We're going to have to cooperate. And that's where real change is going to come from, is once we don't have that relief valve, letting those animals go down to slaughter in Mexico. And I did a presentation on donkey hides, and I saw such horrific things that I did not put in my presentation because it would make you sick to your stomach the way these horses and donkeys are treated in Mexico. And that's just the reality of it. We did not do them any favors by closing the slaughterhouses in the United States because the way they're treated is horrific. At least the way they were treated in the United States was humane. If you can say slaughter's humane, but we kill cows every day. But in Mexico, it's horrible. So we need to stop that first, and then we all need to get together and say, okay, what do we do with these excess animals? How do we treat it? How do we fix it? Things of that nature.
Andrea is offering some information, said it's settled science that if North America didn't exist, there would be no burros on this planet. They evolved in North Dakota 60 million years ago, then 10 to 12,000 years ago. The harshest ice age hit North America, um, more powerfully than Asia. So burros were driven across the exposed land bridge between um, Alaska and Asia. Columbus returned them to North America. There are at least 100 science references proving this. One is the University of California Paleontology. So she's just saying let their findings help your cause, especially when the government asserts that they're feral or invasive. So just trying to help her, heads up, in case you weren't aware of that, I guess.
No, I'm aware of it, but like I said, I'm not a paleontologist, and the government doesn't care. They're set in their ways. They literally don't care. That argument has been presented at several things that I've been to, several events, seminars, things like this, and blind eye 'em. They don't care. The donkeys came with Columbus, therefore they're an invasive species, and that's the reality of it.
Is there anything that we can do to help you and your organization?
Donate because that's what keeps this thing going. The donkeys need money to eat, for vet care, for hoof trimming. That all costs money. Going out and capturing 50, 60, 70 donkeys, that all costs money. Like I said, we don't take money from the government, but what we do is we save millions, if not tens of millions of taxpayer dollars because the government's not having to do it. NASA isn't having to do it. The military isn't having to do it. Park Service. We take all of that financial burden on ourselves. We do it better than the government. We do it cheaper than the government, and the donkeys benefit from our involvement. But it all takes money, and that's bottom line.
Okay, and they can find you on your website. Do you have social media pages also?
Yes, Facebook, Facebook, we're Donkey Adoption. Instagram, we're Donkey Rescue, but donkeyrescue.org will tie you into everything.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. This was very informative, very educational. Everyone's saying how great it was, so we really appreciate it. And everyone says thank you for your outstanding work and for all that you do for our wild burros, donkeys.
Well, it beats hell out of a day job. I can tell you that.
Well, thank you again very much. It was great having you. And if there's ever anything we can do, come back. We can do a chat anytime if we need to raise awareness about some things or just even brainstorm. So just let me know how we can help.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you,
All right.
everybody. And we'll see you tomorrow for some more. Great
All right.
presentation. Thank you.
Y'all take care.
Bye.